It's working. It's Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m., and so it's time for relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. I've been gone for quite a while, doing some traveling. The traveling is over for just a little while, and then it'll start again, and then it'll stop, and it'll start again. So it's just been that kind of year. Just can't quite settle down. Unlike Ole Brager, you should check out Ole Brager's site. He took a vacation and made a stream out of it. I went on a trip and didn't do that, so I just disappeared. Anyway, if I'm a little bit incoherent today, that's probably nothing unusual, right? That's the way things usually are. But if you notice that I am, it's that I'm still just a little bit travel-lagged. Getting back, unpacking, doing laundry, which I still have to do more of. Catching up with all of the mail, paying bills, just all sorts of things, just that aren't terribly relaxing. So I'm going to try to relax during this, but what that might mean is that if I just kind of doze off a little bit, that's me relaxing. I am working on this Apollo model, and it, like all the models I've been working on, everything goes very, very slowly. This one has been going slowly, mostly because the parts they don't fit, like this bit here. The ascent stage that I finished before I started traveling, the ascent stage, when you look at it somewhat closely, you can see that there are just flaws in it, and almost all of those flaws are because the plastic parts just didn't fit together very well, and they had to be, in some cases, like filed down and then sanded so that they even matched up, much less fit. So, there's some gaps in it and some discontinuities and some flaws in the surface, and some of the seams show a little bit. It's not too bad. It's like B-, I think. It came out okay. The paint that I picked looked pretty good. The big success in the lunar module, which I'm not going to show you today because I'm not sure how, I don't want to move things around today, just after coming back from traveling and end up dropping something and breaking things that can't be fixed. But maybe on Friday or something, I'll show you the parts that are done, just to prove that, in fact, things are happening on this model, that it's actually coming along. Like the escape tower has been done for a long time, and the service module is mostly done except for the part that keeps falling off that I probably should cement back on, but I haven't yet. And half of the lunar module is finished, and this whole fairing into which it sits is painted, and it's ready to be assembled. I just haven't done it yet because once I put it together, I don't have a place to put it. So the parts are sitting in a box. But I'm working now on the descent stage, which you can't see in this picture. It's the bottom of the lunar excursion module, or the LEM, the thing that lands it on the moon and then stays there when the part with the astronauts takes off. So this has got a whole lot of weird little spidery parts that have been a real pain to get prepared, because the injection molding leaves all sorts of seams, and in some cases they don't even line up, and so they're the little, and you'll see the little spindly bits needed to have a lot of sanding on it, so that the big seams and the discontinuities didn't show. There's a lot of little spidery bits. So what I'll be working on today, it says making the descent decent, which means making the parts decent enough so that when they're assembled, they don't look like badly injection molded plastic bits and look like sanded down plastic bits, basically. Yeah, so the parts are in the box here, except for some little bits that are in here. These I'm going to clean up. This is these bits are cool. These are the bits of the platform. There's a platform that sits on top of the descent stage onto which the astronauts step, and it has some handrails. So the edges need to be sanded down. And then I'm going to glue that together, these 3 bits. I'm going to put the handrails on the platform. So if everything goes okay, I'll be doing some cementing there today. And then I'll prime it and paint it all as one piece, rather than priming and painting all the little bits and then having it mess up when it's cemented together. And just so that there is actually a little bit of painting today, I'll show you the instructions for the descent stage here. This is the ascent stage. These are the parts that were really bad. They look big, but they were real tiny. And like these 2 halves of these parts didn't fit together. I mean, they weren't the same size. One was smaller than the other. And that was a nuisance. So this bit is done. Okay, I just need to sand it down so it looks like this. Okay. And then there's all these little spindly leg bits that are supposed to be hinged so that when it's all put together, these legs fold up so that they fit inside the fairing. So that's what I've been working on, is all these little spindly legs that I hope work. I really, really do hope that they are strong enough to hold this thing up when it's set down, and that they actually fold up. Yeah, it might happen. They're supposed to, a lot of these parts are supposed to snap together, but they're very fragile, and a couple have been broken and had to be repaired already. So we'll see how this goes. I thought that this would be one of the easiest bits to make, but it's turned out that every time I think something might be the easiest bit to make, it turns out not to be that easy. So once this is done, and it will be eventually, because as you know, things eventually get done on this stream, then it's time to go back to the command module, which is the thing that actually comes back. And it's got these very poorly embossed instrument panels that I'm going to mess with for a while to see if I can't make them look kind of like an instrument panel. And then these extremely angular, they look viciously uncomfortable couches for the astronaut figures. So those go together like that. And then the windows, if you'd been watching this, you saw that making the windows for this is cutting them out of, these is like the window pattern, cutting them out of clear plastic, which is essentially the same kind of plastic as you get with a carry-out container cover. So I actually ended up using that on the lunar module because the piece of it that comes with the model is really small. And it was a good thing I did that because the template that they provided for the lunar module windows didn't match reality. Okay. And so I had to make my own templates. Anyway, so all these parts happen, and then they get, some of them glued together and some don't, because this is supposed to actually you're supposed to be able to replicate the mission by stacking all the pieces up, launching it into virtual imaginary space, and then disassembling them as you did during the mission. And they even show you how that happens back here. They show you instructions about what's supposed to come off and how this thing comes off and then turns around and docks with the lunar module, and eventually it lands on the moon and the LEM takes off, and then that lands back on Earth anyway. Yeah. So this model is, the components are all separable, so that you can see that you can replicate the mission. So I just want to give you a preview of the command module to show you that after I'm done with the descent module, there's still more stuff that had to be done. So I'm working on these little bits, all these little bits that are supposed to fit together to form these legs that splay out, support the model, and then fold up all without breaking. Let's see how that goes. Here's the box of parts. So this is the body of the lunar module. I put some filler in before I left, so I need to do some sanding all around the edges. I'll do that a little bit later in the stream. Here's a bunch of the little bits. Okay. Spindly bits that are supposed to fit together, largely without cement. And then there's 4 more. These are significant struts that have these little clamps on it, and these clamps are supposed to grab onto various and sundry parts of these, like this is supposed to go in there and hold together and rotate. These are still on the tree, so I need to saw them off and then clean them up. And they do need cleaning, like these little C-clamp things are where the bits are supposed to fit in. They're supposed to slide in there without breaking the C. That's not going to happen. And as the rest, as we've seen, I don't know, it's really hard to see on the camera, but these are injection molded, and so you get like this flashing on either side of the struts, so that it just looks like a piece of poorly injection molded plastic instead of well molded round plastic. Yeah. So I use a little mini saw now to cut these off, because if I just break them off, and some of these are broken, they don't leave divots in the piece. So yeah. So the plan for today, this is the plan du jour here, is get this ladder. I think is I'm going to take these 4 bits off. These are the last remaining unmanipulated bits. This one's warped. It's not even flat, it's warped. Get the ridges, the flashing off the edges sanded off as much as I can. Then I'm going to sand down the parts that I filled in on this to see if that can be close to being finished. These bits that are in here for the stand, glue the railings on. That'll be an accomplishment. On the bottom of this, there's a rocket nozzle. I'm going to paint that today. I'm going to do these first, because I really have to get these done. And then, in anticipation of priming all of these, and painting them, it's all painted gold. It's kind of cool. So all of this, except for the ladder, which is painted silver, all of these bits are painted gold, and then they're supposed to be assembled, and we'll see how that goes. I might paint some of this, like this part here. This is where the rocket nozzle of the ascent stage is supposed to sit. They didn't put it on the model. So I might paint this a different color other than the gold, because there's no reason why that would be gold. And then on the bottom, I'm thinking this piece here, this here, The inside might be painted another color. I'm gonna spray paint the whole thing gold first, and then if I decide that I'm going to be painting it, different colors, like the area around where the rocket nozzle goes, then I'll do that with a brush later. Almost certainly going to be painting the inside of this differently though, because that's a piece of metal against which a rocket exhaust hits, and that wouldn't be gold plated, or yeah. Anyway, yes, take these off, clean them up, paint the rocket nozzle in 2 stages. I'm going to paint the outside, let that dry. So I'll paint the outside before break and let it dry over break, and then paint the inside near the end of the stream. So that'll be a painted piece. Yay. Assemble this. And then sand this down, and I'm going to go, if there's time, go over all of these. What I'd like to do is between the end, either later today or on Thursday, is prime all this stuff and maybe even paint it. So I might do some test assembling today. Usually I end up saying I'd like to get that done, and then it ends up taking an extra stream session to get it done. So no promises. Wow. Yeah, you can even see it. There's so much flashing on this one. I think you can even see it, that it looks like the diameter is much larger than it is here and here, because this particular one is so badly done. Yeah, what that means is that the 2 halves of the mold were not in contact. There was a little gap between them, and some of the plastic oozed out. Okay, well, I got to get these off, and I have to start sanding down the edges, and just like there's a blob. That's really nice. There's a blob here for no reason. Doing a lot of sighing. It's like, make these parts good. But they didn't. Okay. So this is my fun modeling purchase. I decided to invest in a tool that was sort of like a thing a modeler would use, as opposed to just an old guy grumping around in his basement. So Microsaw, which is good for sawing these things off instead of breaking them. I had been in the past using an X-Acto knife, but sometimes that just wasn't okay. Some of these are held on by just one little spot, and this one is held on in 4 places. So at some point, I don't know, we'll see. The sequence of things I've described, and whether they get done largely today or whether they lapse over into Friday, I'm not sure. We'll find out as things either progress or don't today. I found that in doing the pieces before I went on this last trip, that it just takes way longer to get these parts prepped, as it said, to make them decent. Just surfaces are small, the parts are delicate, I broke one because I just wasn't holding it in the right place, and it snapped. So, I'll take them off and start working on them and see how far I get. And what I don't finish today, we'll work on Friday. And I'm going to predict that if the parts fit, that's a big if. Okay, if the parts fit and work the way they're supposed to, I could have this finished next week before I go away again. But that's a really big if, and so far those ifs haven't worked out. Whenever I've said if the parts fit, then they don't, or something else happens. So, I've got some extra plastic. This one's a little different than the others. It has little brackets on it for the ladder. So this one has to go in a particular location on the LEM, whereas these three are interchangeable. I guess I'm just going to start with the worst one. I'm looking at this. When I look at this like roundy bit here that holds on to something, it looks like the two sides really almost didn't even match up. It also looks like the biggest challenge today is, there's no place to hold these things. If I put pressure, if I don't hold it right behind where I'm sanding, and I put pressure on it, I could snap the piece. This maybe. I'm going to have to apologize. This is going to be another one of those boring sessions where I'm just rubbing sandpaper on pieces of plastic and complaining about it. Unless I can come up with something interesting to talk about, which is, I don't know, what would be interesting. It doesn't matter. There's no one in chat. No one's watching. I don't have to talk at all. Need to get the music back so that when I'm standing in grumpy silence, there's something going on in the background. This is just going to take a long time. It's just really, really badly molded. And I need to be very careful. And then, and there's the roundy bit here. Well, yeah, there's the the protuberance of some sort of bulge that should be there. The thing is, the it's not only that that there's like flashing between them, but the two halves of the molded part don't match up. And this is going to be like right at the top, right at the top and highly visible place, so that it looks like a badly molded piece of plastic. It's going to be in one of the most highly visible spots on the model. This is an old kit from like the 90s, I think it was made, probably. I haven't worked on anything that is newer than about that. When I built Eliminator a long time ago on the street, and that was the first non-Dungeons and Dragons thing I did. That didn't attract an audience. People don't like Big Daddy Roth Fink models, I guess. Or it has a very limited appeal. Anyway, when I was doing that, those were reissues. The original issues were like back in the 60s, because they built them in the mid 60s. And I remember them not being very well done because the seams showed. Reissue in the 90s replicated, they're not very well done. Seams are showing. Oh, no. We need to see the C. If you can see it, if it focuses, but that needs to be cleaned out. Kind of glad I started with the worst one first, because then everything else will be not as bad. That's I guess that's the definition of the worst one, is that everything else isn't quite as bad because this is worst. But these things, it's almost, if they were going to be painted a flat color, it wouldn't be quite so bad. But it's gold, so it's a metallic, and all the surface flaws are just going to show. And there will be some. There's no way I'm going to be able to get all of them fixed because I can't see them all until it's done. And then when it's done, the alternative is to do it again, and that I'd really like to not do that. That kind of happened with the ascent stage, is that there were flaws that didn't show until the final coat of the metallic color went on. And it was, I didn't see that before. This is going to take the better part of forever, just because of the contours and the nooks and crannies and how much needs to be done and the fragility. So, time to apologize way in advance. How much time this is taking of just, if a needle, yep. You need to use the very, very pointy tip. rotating it. Those, oh, I thought I got that. No, I didn't. The seam is still showing. You know, I'm going to have to come up with something new. I've been doing this stream for like 700 years or something, and managed to talk about a whole lot of meaningless and nonsensical things, but I still have models to work on, things to do, and there's no music, and can only talk about the destruction of the TV antenna industry so many times before it just becomes highly repetitive and boring. I mean, if I only do it like 3 times, then it's only repetitive. But if I start doing like 4 times and 5 times, then it's highly repetitive at that point. That's my cutoff definition of highly. I am not seeing this working. The only quasi-redeeming thing is that the plastic is pretty soft. So on one hand, that's a help, because otherwise I'd have to be grinding away at this stuff with coarser paper and then polishing it with less coarse, and then on. Also makes it, you have to be real careful with it because it's soft, and I did too much with the sandpaper file, and then the part is distorted and sometimes not even usable anymore. Okay, well, I've got like one side of this done, and the other side is pretty bad. I'm guessing that when they, make these things and they do their cursory inspection, I'm guessing, they probably check a little bit when the parts come out of the mold. But what they're probably checking for is like whether the part is even there. Because sometimes if there's not enough plastic in the mold, there'll be a part that is not, maybe not even completed, but certainly only partially filled, right? So they probably check them that way. That's why on some of these old models, you get a little piece of paper inside that says, inspected by Inspector 132174. I'm not sure why they do that. Probably, so that if modelers complain about parts missing or broken parts or parts that are so badly mismolded that they can, fire the inspector who let it through. I'm guessing that because this stuff was made in like the 60s and 70s. And it's the kind of, when you're a plastic model parts inspector, you probably weren't on a real good career path anyway, and always vulnerable. Anyway, yeah. So I'm sure that when these things come off of the mold, that there's somebody who checks to make sure that it looks like the part is there. Okay. Look, yeah. There are 4 struts and they're all the same length, that kind of thing. But they almost certainly aren't checking to see whether or not it's going to take an hour and a half of somebody with little bits of sandpaper to make them look good. So I'm guessing that there's kind of probably like 3 levels, 3 kind of modelers. There's the modeler that I was when I used to build kits as a kid. Okay. And I probably, what you want to do is you just want to get it put together. Maybe like I had, like 2 different kinds of paints. There was black and silver, right? So you paint something black, a piece black, and you paint another piece silver or something. Like the landing gear on planes, paint the tires black. Messily, so that they were black blobs on the ends of the silver struts. You probably would paint those silver. Why not? If you had silver paint, it was always cool. Anyway, yeah. So a part like this, would be modified by a kid like me with a single-edged razor blade. That was my major tool. The razor blade that was wrapped on the one side. That was the tool for cutting these things off of the trees. That was the tool for when there would be a situation like this where this was all filled in on the end and it wouldn't fit. Just gouge away at it with the razor blade. Or maybe, if the flashing was so obvious like it is on this, maybe scrape it along the side a little bit just to do it. But this model would have been finished in a day, And so the inspectors could let a piece like this go through because a modeler like that would just scrape at it with a razor blade maybe a little bit and paint it and glue it together, and then the cement would get on things and mar the paint anyway. And as long as no one, you put it up on your dresser or the top shelf of your bookcase or something, it would look pretty good up there. But it would be done. And the inspector didn't have to worry too much about the quality of the part because, that's, it only needed to fit together with enough cement. If you put enough cement on it, scraped at it with the razor blade not a little bit, it would go together. It would be okay. So then there's the master modelers who make models that are display models. You put them in lighted covered display cases, right? So the surfaces are flawless. None of the seams show. The parts are all symmetric. A modeler like that, getting a kit like this, would say, well, purpose of the parts are like an approximation of what things would end up looking like, and would end up spending more time than I am prepping these parts. Maybe even would buy 2 or 3 kits in order to make one, just to get the best selection of parts in case something broke or didn't fit. Sometimes even just if the parts were bad enough, would just remold their own parts. Okay. And then you would end up with a display model that you could put in a lighted display case and look at practically with a magnifying glass. And modelers like that would, they wouldn't be satisfied with the detail of the kit. They'd be buying aftermarket stuff, and like the instrument panel in the command module. Okay. They would be modifying it in such a way and creating painting masks and tapes and taping and all sorts of things so that there'd never be a brush mark anywhere. The instrument panel would be almost perfect facsimile of the real instrument panel instead of the thing that came with the model. And it would be an amazing kind of display thing. And so the inspectors wouldn't have to worry too much about a part that came out of the mold like this, because they would know that a master modeler wouldn't be satisfied with the parts anyway, and would be doing modifications to virtually all of them to make them look more authentic and fit together perfectly. That kind of thing. So again, the incentive would not be there to make sure that the parts were good. And then there's an intermediate kind of modeler, which is what I am, which is not a master modeler, but just some old guy who's doing this on behalf of Dyson Dungeons, about which I will speak at length in a bit. Who is not satisfied with just scraping off some of the stuff with a single-sided razor blade, and, wants the model to look okay, knows that there isn't the time or the skill. It's definitely not the skill of the master modeler, or the budget, or the time to make the model look okay. And what I'm aiming for is B, if possible, B+ work, as opposed to a master modeler's A or A+. Okay. I want it to look okay at a distance of no closer than 18 inches under fairly... I'm going to have to be careful of the direction of the lighting, because if it's too indirect, then flaws will show, but under not very bright light. And for that intermediate level, represented by me down, of wanting it to look, it looks pretty good at 18 inches under somewhat dim light. This is just really a pain in the butt. And the inspector did not have me in mind when they let this go. Which is to say that I'm spending, for the purposes of the stream and for the way I want the model to look, I'm spending way too much time at a skill level not adequate enough to do the job. Should have taken a before and after of this, because it's coming out looking not hideous. But for this purpose, the purpose of me building this model, this is just really awful in terms of the quality of the injection molding. As I get near the end, I started getting a little bit impatient and almost broke it. That would have been most unpleasant and unfortunate. So this took a long time to get it to the point where under this lighting, without magnification, it looks kind of okay. See, that's the other thing too. As a master modeler, would be doing all of this at least under 1.5, 2 times magnification, so that the flaws under normal, non-magnification would be invisible. But that's just a level I can't attain. Okay. Well, I know that each of these pieces, including all the ones in this box, need to be, examined again before they are painted. So how late did this go? Grief. I know I didn't get started on it right away because I always have to ramble on at the beginning of one of these streams before I start doing anything, but I didn't ramble for very long today. So that took like 45 minutes. It was more than a half hour, way more than a half hour, to just sand down that one little piece. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch the time here because when it gets to be like 11:30, regardless of where I am in the process of making these bits look decent, I'm going to have to stop and paint the outside of the rocket nozzle so that the paint can dry so that I can paint the inside after break. It will look like I have sort of accomplished something. I guess I'm going to do the outside of this first. At least the parts are so small, at least that I can use a fairly coarse sandpaper. And not have to worry about the surface texture. When I'm doing things like the base, the big part, okay, it usually takes at least two sanding steps, sometimes 3, because the parts that are sanded down take on a slightly different surface texture than the rest of the stuff that hasn't been sanded, no matter how fine a grain of sandpaper I use. It doesn't polish enough to make it look like the original plastic. And so I end up, after I sand down the problems, getting a much finer grain sandpaper and sand down the entire surface so that it's a consistent texture. I discovered that the hard way by not doing that, like parts of the submarine that I built before, the hull. It was like, well, I sanded down the parts that needed sanding, but then the parts that weren't sanded had a different surface texture, and it was clear that that was the case. Anyway, this is tiny, and essentially everything is getting sanded, and so I'm not worried about differences in texture. This relaxing sanding, not painting any at the moment. Relaxing Sanding is brought to you by Dice and Dungeons. Dice and Dungeons is a group of family and friends that runs an amazing Dungeons and Dragons show. Dungeons and Dragons show streams with a live chat on Twitch 3 Sundays a month at 2, what is currently Eastern Daylight Time. It's been going on for a very long time now. Sometimes there's a break in the schedule because of holidays. You know, nobody will watch things on holidays, that kind of thing. And sometimes there's just a break. But it's been very consistently done, and it's an amazing campaign in a world created by our dungeon mistress, Alexis. So if you haven't seen it, I need a file for this bit. And if you can't catch it with the live chat on Twitch, you can catch it on YouTube. All of our previous episodes, all the way back to episode 1, are available on YouTube, and you can also listen to them as a podcast. Something going on, including background music usually, but the dialogues or monologues in some cases are, work okay on podcast. So you should catch those, because it's what this is all about, is the Dungeons and Dragons show. This is a spin-off. Yeah, just like Mork and Mindy was a spin-off of Happy Days, I think, right? Petticoat Junction was a spin-off of Green Acres. Those things happen. This is a spin-off because we produce dungeon tiles that we use in our show on the 3D printers, which are behind me, and some of our minifigs on a rosin printer, which is in another room. And they were painted. We hand painted all of them, for the show. And Alexis had the bright idea of, if you're going to be painting them, why don't you stream your painting? And it was, well, this isn't a studio, it's just a workbench with barely adequate lighting, okay, and cardboard. Highly professional, expensive surface there. It's recyclable, okay? Made from recycled materials. It can be recycled. It's a very good thing to be working on. Anyway, yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons show is really what it's all about. And so we were painting the dungeon tiles and minifigs for the show and decided to stream that. And then we got all we needed. Okay, it's like, well, we don't need any more dungeon tiles, at least not for a long time. We don't need any scatter. We don't need any more barrels. We don't need any more fancy beds. It's always fun painting those kinds of things. We even had a water wheel with a grindstone. That was kind of a mill, basically. That was kind of fun to do. But, at some point we didn't need any more of those. So it was, well, go ahead and build a model and stream that. Seriously? Okay. Well, so I did. That's when I built my my Rat Fink. I was looking forward to it. I built them all when I was a kid, when they first came out, in the mid 70s to late 70s. And at the time, I think I did a really decent job. a little bit of money so I could buy paint, the Testors enamels. And I even mixed my own colors with the paints so that it could match the box top if the paints didn't match exactly. I filled in the seams. I didn't know how. I didn't have any decent seam filler or anything, so I just built up paint. The paint was pretty viscous, pretty thick, so I was just able to fill in the seams with the paint so that the seams didn't show. I thought that was pretty clever. So I had the Rat Fink original, Surf Fink, Rat Fink on a bike. That's a cool one. Big. Like that. Angel Fink. Angel Fink was kind of a witch character that had a cauldron. So I mixed metallic colors, green and silver and stuff to make the cauldron look all silvery. And I even got a cotton ball and put some paint inside of that and then put unpainted cotton around that so it looked like it was like steaming. Yeah, so I had like 6 of these things. And I was very proud of them because the seams didn't show and the colors matched and the eyeballs had, I didn't have the right kind of brushes, but I was able to like scrape paint away with a one-edged razor blade, right? I was able to do that where the paint got where it shouldn't be, so I was able to scrape it away and until the painting looked right. But nobody else liked them. My mom hated them. I don't know why. She thought they were gross. But I thought they looked really good. I took them to, the 4th of July craft show at our park. There's always a craft show. And one year I took a F-106 model that wasn't all that well built. The seam showed and everything. Won a little prize. But I took my Finks, and it's nothing. It was like everybody went, what are those? Those are gross. That's dumb. Yeah. I mean, they didn't kick them out of the show, but it came close to that. So they definitely weren't prize winners. Anyway, I'm rambling on about that because I need to ramble on about something. But what I wanted to do was explain that the very first model was one of Sphinx because those are the ones I just actually really wanted to build. But I was advised that the feedback was pretty much like the feedback I got when I was a kid. It's like, no, really? We want people to watch this stream. They watched it when we were painting bricks. We were painting brick tiles. People watch that, but no, Finks aren't attracting attention. So I've got them all sitting there in boxes. I've got, the Angel Fink and the Surf Fink and the Rat Fink and Rat Fink on a bike. I even have a Mr. Gasser now. I didn't have one of those when I was a kid. Didn't get the Mr. Gasser. Anyway, you'll probably never see them because after I'm done with this Apollo thing, which will be yet this calendar year, despite all the travel that's going on, either that I'm traveling or somebody else is traveling and I'm dog sitting. Okay, despite all of that, I think I'll be able to finish it. Finish it a lot faster if I didn't have to spend a half an hour on a little piece like this. I'm going to have to spend a half an hour on a little piece like this, making it presentable. Not even bright light enclosed glass display case kind of okay, but just like not gross. So if I didn't have to spend what will turn out to be almost the entire stream today, just cleaning up these last pieces, much less getting them to the point where I'm doing, where I'm going to go over each one again to make sure I haven't missed any spots, like the spot here. Yeah. So my predictions of what I'd be getting done today, I already know that it's not going to happen. I'm not going to have these ready to be primed and painted for Friday. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure it out, though, because if they're not, then I'm going to have to start pulling out the pieces for the command module. Well, I don't know. What I was thinking is that there wouldn't be enough left on Friday for the final prep of these things to take up the entire stream. But that might not be the case. I mean, it may end up taking that much time. So regardless of how far along these are, okay, I'm going to finish this one. And then I'm going to paint the outside of the rocket nozzle just to get that done. Because if I start another one, I won't be able to finish it in time. I finish this one at least, the first time through. As I said, all these little spindly bits, all the ones in the box that I showed at the beginning, need to be looked at one more time. It's tempting to do that under magnification, but I would just be so disappointed then. I'm just going to use my fingernail and what's left of my close-up vision to inspect those. This is where I'd say something dumb like, well, at least I haven't broken one yet. And then I would just pick one up and snap it, So I'm not going to say that. So anyway, yeah, my intention of building the entire Fink family on this stream was, that hope was dashed by the reality of no one really cares about Finks. The submarine was okay. That was an interesting build. It was more interesting than this because there was so much detail painting. I spent a lot of time with my head magnifier, painting little hams and seats and periscopes and dials and things like that. This model has turned out to be mostly just sanding. If it weren't, like I said, if it weren't for all the sanding that needed to be done, it would have been finished a long time ago. Okay. Hey, who? I will indeed do a flip. Flip, I'm going to flip this one. I don't want to flip anything real big here. I don't want to have little parts go flying. There we go. Yeah, so I've got two of these struts cleaned up first go. The first pass of cleaning up. And then, and I can already see spots that are just not very good. Good enough. Good enough even for adequate. Yeah, so I'm going to go get the rocket nozzle, which is over there, having been primed. Thank you. I'm going to be off screen for just a couple of minutes, and I will be back and do some painting. There. That is the exhaust nozzle for the rocket for the descent stage. But not quite yet decent enough descent stage. It ends up going there like that. Pretty thrilling. Anyway, the standard colors I have devised for rocket nozzles now is steel on the outside and flat black on the inside. Excuse me. So I'm going to be painting this steel on the outside. I have to have a way of holding it. I'm doing this now so that I will be able to let it dry. Okay, I'm wondering, what am I doing with this? What I'm doing with this is making a blob of paper towel that I can push in there and hold it like that. Everything is very high tech here. I have, maybe what I should do is promote this as not like amateur hour painting, right? Because there's people out there who do streams of, they're master modelers, they've got all sorts of equipment and lights and magnifiers and files and sanding and more importantly, talent. Okay. So they really know what they're doing. And you can watch those streams and you can go, wow, that's really impressive. And that model turned out amazing. You could look at that with a 3x magnifying glass and not see any flaws on it. You can do that. It isn't what this is. This, maybe I should just reframe this instead of saying I'm really not that good at it. Just to say, I'm doing the kind of thing that if you really don't have much skill or time or tools, but you want your models to look okay, not terrific, not like you would pay $7,000 to put it in a display case kind of thing, but you want it to look better than the models did when you were like 10 or 11. Okay. This might be the show for you, because then I can show you what you can do with a popsicle stick and paper towels when you're painting a rocket nozzle. This might end up taking 2 coats. I guess that'd be okay. If I paint it now, I should be able to, it'll dry, this dries pretty fast. I should be able to check it again before break and maybe get a second coat on it if I need to. This is one of those things that should just be airbrushed, really, but as I've explained many, many times, I have it's less than no skill with airbrushes. It's like airbrushes and I can't be in the same room together, kind of. I have the ability with an airbrush to get paint where paint can't be put. Look, can't even close a bottle without getting paint on my fingers. Can you imagine that with an airbrush? just everywhere. Mostly not where I want it, mostly not in the way I want it. And then cleanup. Cleanup just becomes impossible because it made such a mess. Anyway, I could try again. I've been encouraged. Maybe it was just, the wrong place and wrong time. Maybe you'd be okay at it now. Maybe that's true. Likely. Maybe. Like this paint I'm using now is designed to be used with an airbrush. It's meant to be used with an airbrush, not this brush. But, make do with what you got. So I'll say that, this stream, if you really know what you're doing, can be kind of amusing. Okay. If you don't know what you're doing, you might say, oh, that person knows what they're doing. And the only reason you would say that is because you had no idea what you were doing, and you would misconstrue doing something at all for knowing what one is doing. But then this might be the perfect stream for people who basically have a workbench and a piece of cardboard, and they don't want to invest in an airbrush, that level of modeler, and they would just like to know what, I'd like my models. I'm not going to make a living at making models, but I'd like my models to look a little bit better. And maybe this is the level, that would be the audience for whom this would be, the kind of people who would say, how am I going to hold this rocket nozzle and paint it? It's like, I don't have any clamps or anything that would work for that. And it's like, oh, I can shove a piece of paper towel up its butt, rocket nozzle butt, and hold it with a stick. I've got like an old chopstick from the last time we had takeout, Vietnamese food, or, oh yeah, I've got a popsicle stick from this popsicle I just ate. And I can do that. I can make stuff work that way. So there. This is a stream for people who want to make models that look kind of okay. They look pretty decent. If you don't, know that they could look really amazing, but you just don't want to invest that kind of time and money into your modeling, but you want them to look okay. And so I can show you things like shoving a popsicle stick and a paper towel into the nozzle of a rocket motor. I actually kind of like the way this turns out with brushing, because it's a little streaky, but then, a rocket motor nozzle is kind of a streaky thing. getting bubbles today. There. Not too bad. It's not perfect. There's still a couple of spots there. It's where I should have just left it alone, because now I'm just getting more bubbles. Okay, I'm going to let this dry. And then before break, check back. I'm going to put a paper towel over this before I snap it shut, because I know it's going to splatter. This dry, and then before break, I'll take a look and see if I want to recoat it again with a second coat. So what am I going to do with this, you might ask? I can't stand it up. No, it's not going to work. What I can do is, got this. It's a piece of wood with holes in it, and the holes are the right size for the base of an alligator clip. It's another thing you can do at home. That's if you've got a drill and an alligator clip and a piece of scrap wood, you can clamp your popsicle stick like that and stick it in there like that, and then it holds it. So I'm going to, now that I've had this insight about maybe I shouldn't be ashamed of my lack of workshop and my lack of tools and skill and things like that, and say, this is, well, what this is primarily just filler for Dyson Dungeons, right? But yeah, but if you're the kind of person who, if there's any paint near you, like within 2 feet, and the can isn't even open, right? The jar or the can isn't even opened, and you end up with paint on your finger. So if you're like that, and you don't have an airbrush, and you're not going to get one because you're pretty casual about your bottle making, right? Or maybe you don't have the budget, or maybe you just know, like me, that it is just a messy disaster waiting to happen. You don't have huge stands for your paint. You've got cardboard. Casual, inexpensive model making. That's the theme of this. It's like, I'm a casual model maker. I like them to look nice, but I know that, I don't have the time or the skill or the materials to make it look perfect. I want them to look nice. I don't have much of a budget. I don't want to have much of a budget. It's just a model. Okay. What can I do? And you can watch this stream, and you can watch someone who has, well, unless everybody goes to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, and becomes a patron at an extremely high level, which would allow me to have a budget. Okay. But unless people do that, then basically my budget is pretty low, and I can show people to make a model at a B level, sometimes even B+, occasionally, not an entire model, but portions of a model, even laughs into kind of the A area. When there isn't any choice, sometimes down to a B-. I can show people how to do B-level model making inexpensively. What I really like to do is show them how to get this brush clean. Just have a hard, I really don't want to put a second coat on because it'll take forever to get the brush clean again. This is just isopropyl alcohol, like rubbing alcohol you can buy at a drugstore, which works pretty well when water with acrylic paints. Usually water is enough, but sometimes it's not enough. When water's not enough, that works. That's another low budget thing. And you can keep it in like a jar that you used, that you got with food. I think that was from a jar of gravy. You know, the label comes off, and you can even keep the label on if you want to take it off. My wash water for my brushes, these are like little yogurt tins, well, plastics, little yogurt containers. So that's pretty inexpensive. The palette, okay, for the paint, these, you can buy these. You have to buy them like 10 or 12 at a time because that's how they come. And I get a dozen of those for hardly any money at all. And then because the acrylics, will clean up pretty well, I keep washing it out, and I can get, if I'm painting like on the submarine, I could keep one of those going, for like 4 or 5 months before I'd have to replace it. This one that didn't get cleaned, so that well is kind of lost, but there, yeah. Probably the most expensive thing I've got is this little saw that I bought. This little saw that I bought special for cutting pieces off of the trees. Sandpaper isn't too expensive. These needle files, a set of needle files, you really want to, if you're going to do this, inexpensively, if you want to invest in something, invest in good brushes, especially teeny tiny little detail brushes. You need teeny tiny little detail brushes. A set of needle files really help because your plastic parts are going to be misshapen. And sandpaper. And you want to get, I use a lot of 6 and 800 grit. Okay. And then you want like a 1500 or 2000 grit for final polishing, because even the 600 grit will leave scratch marks that are visible on the surface of something if you end up painting it. Okay, well, that rocket nozzle is going to sit there for another 15 minutes, and I'll take a look at it and see how it looks. I'm going to move on from these. They have to get done eventually to this. This is the platform that goes on the top of the lunar module. Either like this or this, I'm not sure which. Onto which the astronaut steps before going down the ladder. And I'm going to work on this one next because I want to cement the hand railings on. Cementing the hand railings on because I want, when I prime this and paint it, I want to prime and paint it assembled. Okay. And the reason for that is that after the cementing, the reason is that cements, a lot of adhesives, not all, but some adhesives will dissolve the paint. And so if they drip a little bit onto the painted surface, no matter how nicely you prepared it, no matter how much time you took getting rid of the flashing and the excess plastic in various and sundry forms, or sanded down the like this little protrusion of plastic that doesn't need to be there, that will mar the surface. No matter how careful you were, and no matter how beautiful the painting that you did on top of that beautifully prepared surface, when you cement the pieces together, what you can end up with is dissolving all that paint and destroying the work that you did. So in this case, because of these little handrails, which require tiny little bits of cement, I'm going to cement it first, so that if there's like a blob or a surface that gets marred, I can like sand it smooth. I can repair it. And then the paint itself, like if there's little gaps or holes or something, the painting process itself will kind of smooth and even those out. So I'm going to do that. Now this is one of those things. Okay, you can see everything's really small. The holes are extremely tiny, right? But the thing that will happen that will make this thing look stupid when it's done is that the handrails won't be vertical. They'll be like tilted. So it'll look like, you go down an old rusty staircase and the handrails are bent and tilted out of shape. I'm afraid that could happen here. The handrail will go on and it'll just be, instead of perfectly vertical on the surface, it'll be tilted one way or the other. That would be, I don't want that to happen. Sometimes, even though these can sometimes leave scratch marks, there's just like a little piece that's really hard to reach with. In this case, there's raised edges, a non-slip surface on the platform, and couldn't get the sandpaper quite on there. The bottom of this is awful, and I don't know how much to mess with it. There's these circles on it. Just the chance that they could show. So I'm going to sand it down. I don't want those little circles to show. So I'm going to sand the bottom of this and try to get this circle out of there as much as I can. I'm going to end up painting the bottom of this as well as the top, because although this sits on the top of it, there's a gap between the bottom of this and the top of the rest of the lem, and you could look underneath it and see white plastic, and that wouldn't look good. I'll end up painting the top and the bottom of this all the same color. It's supposed to be kind of like silvery. I've got several different darknesses, shades of metallics. So pick one that doesn't glare too much. One of the darker ones, not as dark as the steel that I used on the rocket nozzle. Not that dark, but Then there's going to be holes in the bottom where the railing goes in. I'll have to decide whether to bother filling those in or not. I'm not sure if I will. I probably will. I'll probably fill them in, and then I'll probably set this down and forget that there are railings attached to the other side of it and break them off and then try to repair it. I'm anticipating what I can, the things that I can do wrong on this. It's pretty silly. It's just this platform with some railings that you're supposed to stick in the holes and cement it together. How hard can that be? How hard can that be? Things can be as hard as you can make them. And sometimes I manage to do that. I managed to get it as hard as it can. How hard can that be? Well, I just made that really hard. I'm being careful here because there's little protuberances here that fit into the top of the lem. Okay. That lines it up and holds it in place. And I don't want to sand those off. I also want to get rid of this circle as much as I can. These circles are the bane of my modeling existence. They're completely gone. It's not too bad. The outside looks okay. Let's give the edges a sanding. Okay, these things, just like all of the other circular, tubular kinds of things, are highly flawed. And of course, these are really tiny and angular and next to impossible to hold and subject to breakage. So do what I can, and then I have to test fit it. What I find is with some frequency, meaning more often than not, the little tabs don't fit in the little holes. And then those need to be modified without breaking them off or getting rid of them, or making them so small that they'll flop around in the hole instead of filling the hole. So I'm noticing that the design engineers, not necessarily the production engineers, the ones who made the molds that produce the crappy parts, the design engineers, since this only goes on one way, okay, there's the right way and the wrong way in terms of orientation, that they, you can see it here. One hole is round and one is just a little half circle. Yeah, the little tabs are that way too, making it even less likely that they will fit. So, yep, this is getting to be presentable. Circles on here. Be on an inside. Well, they only fit one way. And then it lines up. And falls over. Yeah, fell over really well. How that goes. Clean this one up. Yeah, I got quiet. Sorry about that. Just trying to get these things cleaned up well enough to be able to install them. You really can't see it. I mean, you can see I'm rubbing on something, but I could put that down lower, I guess, but I'm not sure that even helps. It's just these tiny pieces, and there's a ridge along the outside of the tube here because that's where the mold marks are. So, circle thing here. A raised circle that needs to come up. While at the same time trying to hold it and not break it. Don't break it, I tell myself. Breaking it would be bad. Okay. See if this fits. Okay. Well, if I can lift this up, you can see that it looks pretty stupid with the railing falling over. So the railing needs to be upright. That's how this is going to look. I'm going to cement this after break. I want to look at it one more time to make sure. Like here, I can see there's still a little bit of plastic edge right there that needs to not be there. Cementing these holes are really tiny. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the applicator tip, okay. But I'm going to put the cement in the bottom of the hole. From the bottom. Okay, and enough of it will soak into the little hole. Capillary action will do that. Then I can turn it over and set these in, and it should make contact with the cement without it smearing all over the surface. This is to say, if there's excess cement, it should be underneath and not on top. At least that's the hope. So there's the little platform onto which the astronauts step. And that is pretty much ready to be cemented. I want to just take one more, before I do, check these out one more time to make sure that there's not any obvious ridges or blobs or something showing. And then, since they only go on one way, I will make an effort to get them in the right side. Use a little applicator pinpoint thing to get a little blob of cement in from the bottom that will work its way up into the hole and hopefully hold on to it. Excuse me. Take a look at the rocket nozzle. If it needs a recoat, I want to do that before the break. If it looks okay, I think it looks okay. I mean, it's kind of streaky, but it might, this was the descent stage, and the rocket had fired, so I'm going to say that it's okay. There's little bits on the bottom here. Just grab this little brush here on the bottom of the cone. So what will happen after break is that I will remove it from the paper towel holder thing, and I'm going to paint the inside of the nozzle flat black. And I'll be able to clamp the nozzle with an alligator clip right here on the edge, because this bit here, the kind of collar, it actually is out of sight. It goes on the inside of the lunar module. And I think, this isn't bad. It's a little, yeah. I kind of like the non-uniformity. Clean this brush, yay! Yeah, yeah. This is that was almost an oops. I almost set this down on top of that. I've used these metallics many times before, and I don't remember. Well, I've only used them for detail. I mean, tiny little bits of things like chainmail and buttons and hinges on doors and stuff. And the brush, I remember the brush is cleaning up much more easily than this. But the black pigment is just really stuck in the brush. Okay. Let me do a recap and a projection. What is yet to be done this afternoon is checking this out one more time. Okay, to make sure that there aren't any more significant flaws on the railings. And then I'm going to cement the railings on. I'll be going down, looking across at eye level, making sure the railings are vertical and not leaning. And hopefully that will happen. So, do a little bit of touch-up sanding, put some cement in from the bottoms of the holes, insert these railings, and then that'll be ready to be primed. I'm going to paint the inside of the rocket nozzle black, and I'm going to hopefully finish these two and maybe do some final sanding and seam checking on the descent stage. This is where the rocket nozzle goes. And then if that all kind of goes forward, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be ready to prime these things or not. It would be really cool if I could just prime and paint them between now and Friday and do assembly, but I'm not sure I can promise that. So on Friday, well, anyway, that's the steps. I need to finish these, at least the first go around, take care of that, paint the rocket nozzle. These things take like 20 minutes a piece, so that takes a good deal of time. And then get ready to do more on Friday. But I'm going to take a break here. I'll be back in about half an hour, somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes. Kind of is all I can promise. Come back, take care of this, work on these, paint the inside of the rocket nozzle, maybe do some touch-up sanding depending on how the time goes. Thanks for watching so far. I'll be back then, like I said, in about a half an hour. And do more stuff on the Apollo, making the descent stage decent. See you then. There it is. Late as usual. Okay. So let me start doing some of the things I said I was going to do. Clean up the work surface here a little bit. Maybe it's out of the way. So I'm going to assemble this. Start by inspecting these one more time. Yeah, good thing I am, because there's a significant flaw there. It's one of those molding circles. If you've heard me rant about those over and over again, for some reason, no, I think there's no good reason. There's no good reason why. In the spots that are conspicuous, these little circles get molded in. I'm sure they were not designed to be there. There'd be no reason why there would be little protruding either above the surface or below. If they're above, it's not too bad. They can be sanded out. If they're below, then it's just trying to minimize their appearance. Circles, or there they are. Just not illuminated. You have to get this sort of like not a problem. There's a problem there. The cement in the bottoms of these holes. And then put these parts in and attempt to hold them so that they are not leaning over, looking like they're half broken. Okay, well, it is about as good as it will get. Will the capillary action kind of thing actually work? Cement will go through these little holes. Comes the getting them to stand upright part. Trying to get them, vertical and parallel, right? No, somehow cement managed to ooze all over that. I have no idea how that managed to come through like that. Okay, well, it looks like they're sticking, and they're pretty straight. And as far as I can tell with my eyeballs. I think this will do. So this will be ready for priming. It's prime time. I have to say that every time. Can't think of anything else to say, right? This piece of dirt. Dust. Yeah, if I keep rotating it and playing with it, I'm probably going to mess it up. So it's important to just leave this now. Probably best if I put it in the box. It'll be okay. I'll just put this in the box with the other stuff. There's that. I did some assembly. Okay. Now I'm going to go on to I have to get these guys done. There's no way to avoid it. So back to sanding and a little bit of filing on this one at least. This one's pretty bad too. In the scheme of things, this is not as bad as the first one, but it's the second worst one. Probably, well, I'll have to see how the time goes. I'd like to paint the inside of that rocket nozzle yet today, but it's more important to get these done. So my focus is going to be on the finishing of these struts, and then the rocket nozzle. And I think what's going to happen on Friday is that I'm not going to have these ready to be primed yet today. It's not going to happen. So on Friday I'll finishing them, all of the parts. I'll do some test fitting. The test fitting could end up taking a good long time because it's not. I don't know. It just seems unlikely that they're going to fit very well. And so I'm going to have to do a bunch of test fitting. And it's not just, maybe I'll just, like, doing one might not be enough because all of them are just slightly different from each other. And there's the possibility, I hate to think of that, there's the possibility that that they won't be interchangeable. Okay, what I mean is that what's supposed to happen is that at least there's 4 of these landing struts, so it shouldn't much matter which of the Y-shaped ones get paired up with which of the long ones, which get paired up with which of the bracket-shaped ones. It shouldn't matter, but it might. I mean, it might be that they need to be of a set, and I'll need to test that. If that's the case, then I need to also be really careful during the whole priming and painting process that each set sort of stays together. I've done that before. Yeah. It's like, oh, I very, very carefully match up the sets, okay, and I very carefully tape them down to the backing, the cardboard backing for priming and painting, and then I pull them off and very, very uncarefully just mix them up at that point. That was not a happy thing. Almost wasn't able to get the parts to fit together then. It did come together, but it was, let's just say it was an unforced error. These parts just, they don't look identical. And not being identical means that they may not all fit together well. It depends on the tolerances too. And test fitting could be a little bit tetchy because it might just like go one way. You know, you snap this into place, sort of snap it into place. Not that there's any much give. These are not flexible. They're very brittle. Well, the test fitting is going to be tentative. I mean, I might not fit them together. There is that. As I'm talking to myself out loud here, it's possible that I could just assemble the whole thing and then paint it. Even with flexible joints, there's always the risk that the paint would get in there and freeze the joint, right? Because paint is an adhesive that it could actually stick the parts together. But on the other hand, there is some advantage to assembling these things before painting. I'll just have to see what happens on Friday when these things get when the test fitting happens. It's a decision I will make in the moment based upon real-time experience. It is to say, I don't know what's going to happen until the time happens. One good thing happened today is that, you know, I kept explaining over and over again during this stream that I'm not a master modeler and I'm not a master painter. I don't know how to use an airbrush, at least not so that it works well without making a hideous mess. I can barely use a paintbrush without making a mess. I very frequently end up with paint on parts of my hands that were not anywhere near the paint. So this in no way can possibly be a how-to-do modeling show, but I think today, I was talking out loud about that, I found a niche. Because I was talking about like 3 levels of model making and how for 2 of them, the fact that these pieces suck in terms of their injection mold quality isn't really that important, but that for 1 of them, it really is important and most annoying. So for like the true master modeler, it's just expected that the parts are going to suck and that they might have to be modified or even replaced with custom built pieces, you know, in order to make the model look good, so that the pieces one gets with the model are just kind of like a starting point, you know. And for the you know, the 9-year-old modeler, it's not that big a deal because you just want to get the model together so you can stick it up on your shelf, right? So you might do, you know, some parts don't fit all together. You might get a razor blade or a file or something and manipulate them that way. So that for that kind of modeler, it's not that critical. But for someone in the middle, like me, the fact that it takes like 15 to 20 minutes to clean up each one of these tiny little struts so that they look okay, you know, not perfect, but just even okay, is really pretty annoying. You know, and not being able to use an airbrush means that just the manipulation of the paints is different. Working on pieces of cardboard with minimal tools. But then I realized, you know, maybe that for a lot of people, that's just the level of modeling that they're dealing with. They're trying to do a really nice job, but they don't, the time, ability, materials, equipment, all of that to do the A plus quality display model kind of thing, but they want, like I do, something that's adequate, that looks really pretty good under, 18 inches away under dim light. You don't have a huge budget and don't want to be dealing with all sorts of pieces of equipment and things that they're going to use maybe once or never. So this could be a how-to, how to make adequate models on a budget. That's going to be the new subtitle. Adequate quality modeling budget. And it's kind of true. The expensive things, most expensive things that really kind of need are needle files, some good quality brushes, but not super. You don't have to pay $20 to have a really good fine detail brush. You can get them for about half of that. Use isopropyl alcohol and water with your acrylic paints. Paints can add up. Paints can get pretty expensive, so need to be prepared for that. Maybe minimize the number of colors that you use, on a model. Or experiment with mixing your own colors from some just primary colors. That can work too. So I would say that, you can do that pretty inexpensively. Piece of cardboard. Cardboard works really well because after it gets all messed up like this, with all paint drops and everything, get another piece of cardboard. Or if it doesn't have printing on it, the printing on it just gets really distracting. Like the blank cardboard. But if it doesn't have printing on it, you can flip it over and can rotate it. So I can get four complete work surfaces out of one piece of cardboard. That's pretty frugal. That's on a budget. So if you're doing adequate modeling, adequate display, B plus, B minus, on a lapse into C work, but celebrate your A quality whenever it happens. Can do it pretty inexpensively. You can get cardboard boxes to hold your pieces, paper towels. Sandpaper is not too expensive, and as you can see, I'm not using a lot of it. So when models are little, so little goes a long way. Yeah, and these little pallets are cheap. Containers for your rinse water, isopropyl alcohol can just be like reusing jars. As long as you can seal them fairly tight. Yep. That's the theme. That's the newly discovered theme of this show. Relaxing painting, or not terribly relaxing modeling with Dyson Dungeons, is how to do, pretty good. It's pretty good work. It's okay. Pretty, that part really, you did a good job. People always say nice things to you, even if they don't mean them. But you judge your own quality of your work. And I did pretty good. That looks all right. I got like 80% of the seams totally invisible, and a few places I'll still show, but But I was able to mask the windows on the scent stage. Tiny little pieces of tape, one little bit at another with tweezers, spray painted and pulled them off. And the edges were nice and clean, and the windows didn't get poked in. And I found a way to do that. Yeah, this show is how to do pretty, how to do pretty good, not bad, decent modeling on a budget. Yeah, the so I can like gameplay, right? Video games. You can either be a champion at a world tournament, or you can get real hardcore sometimes with your raiding parties and all multiplayer groups. You can just be a casual player where you want to have fun, but you want to play the game pretty decently. This is kind of that level. This is just slightly above casual modeling. Okay. This is taking casual modeling one step further into, that's not bad. It's pretty good. Learn how to hold pieces on the ends of a popsicle stick with paper towel wrapped around it. Okay, well, this is probably close to being done. Like I said, I have to warn everybody that each of these pieces, which I'll be showing you a little bit later because there's a lot of them, will have to be reviewed one more time and probably sanded a little bit more before they're ready for painting, because I always find that giving something a second or third look, rotating it in a way that it hadn't rotated before under a slightly different light, flaws that weren't obvious before become obvious, and that's almost certain going to happen with this as well. Again, this is going to be a session of model building, sometimes called relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. In which, despite the fact that stuff went on for, in a 4-hour stream, 3.5 hours of actually doing stuff, that despite that, it will look like hardly anything got done. The one happy byproduct kind of doing the stream while I'm working on these models is that this ring light camera, which is there to light up things for the camera, also lights them up for me. So it's a nice source of light aimed right at where I want it. What's going on here? Okay, well, that needs to be fixed. This one has little attachment points for the ladder. If you haven't been, if you're just kind of like watching in now and you're wondering, what am I doing with all this sandpaper? It's, these things are injection molded. And as a result, there's a seam or a ridge, in some cases, even a misalignment along the edges of all of these things. And when they get painted metallic, or any color really, it just shows very badly. I mean, it just really jumps right out and says, this is not how this was supposed to look. The Apollo lunar module landing legs did not have ridges down the sides of all of the struts, or misalignment of the parts here. And so I'm spending countless minutes. They're countless because I haven't been keeping count. I shouldn't say countless. It's like they could have been counted, but they're uncounted. I'll call them uncounted minutes. Spending uncounted minutes sanding off the little flashings, the excess plastic on the ridges that were formed when the injection mold didn't close completely, letting excess plastic ooze out along the length of these pieces. So these uncounted minutes, many, many uncounted minutes being spent cleaning up the pieces so that they look like long metal rods or metal tubes and not misshapen pieces of plastic. Yeah. Transformation of poor manufacturing into adequate looking things. But yeah, it's been taking forever. I started more or less on time this morning and got those off the tree, and I've been spending all but maybe 20 minutes of this entire stream, maybe 30 minutes of this stream doing nothing but sanding off mold marks. I suppose that's not that bad. I mean, I won't call this a work of art, but I'm going to use art as a analogy. Okay. When something is cast, you make a mold out of, whether it's a lost wax thing or piece of clay or however, a mold is made and the metal is poured in. it always, I mean, it comes out of the mold needing a lot of work. And my understanding is that, if you do a brass casting, that one is going to be spending, somebody, probably some apprentice somewhere in the shop, is going to be taking fine sandpaper like this and polishing that brass for days and days and days to get rid of the mold marks and the irregularities that are left after the molding process. And so I'm not going to say this is a work of art, but it's the kind of thing that happens with any casting process. I'm pretty certain that there's just a whole lot of finishing work that needs to be done. And that finishing work consists primarily of what I'm doing here. Taking an abrasive and rubbing it. Trying to be careful in the process, not to break anything or rub something that shouldn't be rubbed. You don't want to rub off things that shouldn't be rubbed off. Okay. But then there are things that have to be rubbed off. And so that's, an analogous thing to what I'm doing here. This stuff comes out of the mold and it's far from perfect. Stuff came out of the mold and it was far from perfect. Yep. It did not disappoint in that way. Done with this one. I will say that it is not finished. Okay. It's just that the first go at it, getting it down to maybe 95% of where it needs to be, will be completed. And then I'll show you all the parts that I've got. And on Friday it'll be more of this, because frequently is that when things look like they're okay, then it's always been a good idea to look at them again under a different light and a different orientation, because sometimes just obvious spots get missed. That's happened with painting, as I said, with some frequency. Is no, it looks like it's done, and then I turn it over and all except for that big spot that I didn't get painted. And so all of these pieces are going to get a going over. It will be tedious. And it's like, I've already done this. Why do I have to go back and do this again? Well, because you catch things the second time around. And then after they've been gone over, and hopefully caught everything, probably not. There's always something. Like I found many pieces is that this is going pretty well, and then it's like I turn it in a certain direction and look at it from another angle that I should have maybe 3 times over done, but didn't. It's like, oh, how could I miss that? Sometimes the part needs to be redone. There have been times when I've had to thought a part was done, and I saw that there was such a big flaw that I had to basically start over, take the paint off, and redo part of it. Well, I can say that these look better now than when I started. But again, I can't be sure. Can't be sure until I double check everything, which I will do on Friday. I could double check things today. I find, though, that as this gets to the end of the stream, have I got like 45 minutes left? Get to the end of a stream. I should limit myself to things that are not risky, okay? In terms of either the detail that I'm working with or like breaking a piece, which I could do now. If I went back and started reviewing all of those, there's a pretty decent chance that I would just grab one wrong or get impatient or lose focus for a moment and just break it. At this point, I'm just checking to make sure I didn't miss like an entire thing, entire spot. Just over here. Yeah. After the streams, I usually end up having to like stretch out on a couch. That's my excuse, is that I have hunched over so much that my back hurts. And that's actually kind of true. But mainly it's just I'm lazy at the end of this, and I have to have an excuse just to lay down for like 15 minutes and not attend to anything else. Okay. There's 4 of them. And a bunch of little sandpaper bits here. So let me move things out of the way. This I don't need anymore. I can very carefully put it in the way somewhere else. I can't say out of the way because it's still going to be in the way. This way. Else away. And we'll put it away so that there's a chance I'll find them when I want them again. I don't need this. I don't need this. There. Getting stuff out of the way. Okay. Well, this is the box of parts. These are all the parts for the lunar module descent stage. Even though it's white on white, I think you can see the multitude of little fiddly bits. Okay, all these tiny little struts that somehow come together and attach to yet even tinier little brackets on the descent stage here. I mean, the only attachment points are here and down here. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But on Friday, I'm going to go over all of these little bits, including the ladder. Go over all of those little bits and make sure that I have gotten the flashing and any protuberances off of them so that they're presentable. And then I might attempt to do a test fitting of one of these just to give myself an idea of how it works. So yeah, I'm going to go over all of these one more time, each one more time, so it'll be tedious, and I'll talk about something boring and whatever to pass the time while I'm doing that. I need to sand down the edges of this. If there's time, I might do that yet today. Look at this, see? I did some construction. I made the platform. The platform goes here just like this. These little pegs are supposed to fit in these little holes. Yep, like that. So that the astronauts come out of their hatch and walk down the platform there. That's pretty cool, huh? I test fit that, and it, it sort of fits. And then the ladder goes down this leg, the one that attaches here. And yeah, the railings are staying on. Won't show much in the bottom. Look, the holes are actually pretty well covered up by the cement. I probably will sand those down a little bit. There, I didn't break it. That was good. Oh yeah, I'll show off. These are the astronauts that sit inside the capsule. They're kind of weird looking, I think, but there they are. But the standing on the moon guy came out pretty well, I think. I even shaded the pants, so that you could see the moon dirt. Needs a little bit more there, maybe, but the moon dirt that got all over on the sleeves there by the gloves and up the bottom of the pants. This guy came out okay. I think it's not historically accurate. This is not how the moon suit actually looked in terms of the attachments that go on the front and the camera and stuff. But, it is what it is. I'm going to set this. What should I do next? I need to paint the inside of the cone, the rocket cone. Let me do a little sanding on this. This is I just filled in gaps and holes with some spackling compound, really, and it works best if I sand that with really fine-grained sandpaper. No more than the 800. It would have been nice if I actually marked this stuff. This will do, I guess. So I'm just going to go around this and sand the places that had filler. The filler is pretty soft. It sands off fairly quickly and easily. And hopefully, it's still not going to be perfect because the fillers I have, I just haven't found the right thing for it. I had, I know paint companies, Tamiya, Viejo, they make plastic fillers, but one of them is highly toxic. It basically said, don't use this anywhere near people or animals. So that was an issue. The other one I have goes on pretty easily, but it doesn't harden. Okay, it fills the gap, but it doesn't harden, and so I tried to sand it, and it just pulls it off. And that kind of misses the whole point, right? Because no matter how careful one is in applying the filler, well, yeah, and the fact that it doesn't harden means that it leaves a totally different surface texture too. You want these things to harden so you can sand them down, and the surface texture is the same everywhere. And if it's not, well, then This is the point of filling in the gaps as well, because you want them to be invisible. A long time ago, I used auto body filler and buy little tubes of it, like toothpaste tubes of it, right? So you don't have to buy a huge can. And that actually worked pretty well. It hardened well and sanded well. But I tried it again this time, and it dissolved the plastic, leaving a rough surface all around. And I'm thinking I'm still going to go back to that and try it again sometime. I think that it just wasn't mixed right, because it's like an epoxy mixture. And I think what happened is that it wasn't mixed, and as a result, one part of the epoxy ended up dissolving the plastic, whereas if it were properly mixed, it wouldn't have done that. But maybe I'll try that again on some test plastic. Maybe, if I remember, and there's nothing else going on Friday, maybe I'll do that then. The plastic filler didn't harden enough to sand. The auto body putty hardened enough to sand, but it ended up melting some of the plastic, which means that it marred the surface of the areas around the part where it filled. This stuff is spackling compound, which is very soft, okay? But it's sandable, and it does leave, it doesn't polish to a sheen surface. I mean, it doesn't polish like the plastic does. So it right in the seams, you can still see the seam. It's filled in, but it looks maybe like it's welded or something. There's just a discontinuous surface texture, just enough to be noticeable. So the ideal thing would be a filler that would fill the holes, harden so that it could be sanded, and sanded down so that the surface texture was identical to the plastic around it. That would be the ideal. And I'm sure there are people out there who have been successful at finding that and using it, but I am not one of them. The spackling compound has actually been really pretty good on this model because it's all white on white. Okay. And so there aren't any issues of like color run or anything. Just like all the rest of this, on Friday I'll be going over all of this again. Reviewing all of it to make sure that it came out pretty well. There are some of these seams that closed up nicely. It works the best. This is where it works the best, is if there's excess cement and it oozes out a little bit, because the cement dissolves the plastic. And if the dissolved plastic successfully fills the gap, then it looks pretty good. This particular thing is going to be painted gold. The scent module of the lunar module was essentially gilded. And that came out okay. There was a tab that fit into a gap there to help alignment. And that left, there's a little, yeah, that's, if I should rub that out or not. And then the whole thing was wrapped in gold colored Mylar. And the model kit actually has that. So it wraps all the way around the outside of this. Which I will do as part of the assembly. I think what I'll end up doing is wrapping this. See, there's these holes, these openings where the landing struts go in. This was dust. This, and then just leave the little holes showing rather than trying to wrap it after those have been attached. I think that will work. That will work better. You know, and then there's like wrapping it around here. I think I've been thinking about how am I going to attach the gold Mylar foil, and I think contact cement is the way it's going to go. You know, put contact cement all around here and on the inside of the Mylar, and then wrap it. This isn't going to be too hard to do, but this might be an issue. We'll see. Okay, well, this will all have to be touched up again later, so I'll put that back in the box. Let me see the box of parts again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, I'll close up here. Yeah, white on white. All those little bits need to be gone over one more time to make sure that they're not marred. And then I'll test fit one just to get some idea of how this works, how the parts go together. And then I'll be priming them and painting all of these and this sometime in the future. Let's wrap this up and close this. Put this back on top. I'm going to show dungeon tiles. Yes, I haven't done that in a while. I've been gone, so dungeon tiles. Here we go. I'm bringing in dungeon tiles. So all of them. This is how this stream got started, is we print PLA 3D printer back there prints dungeon tiles, in this case, rough stone. Okay. This is printed as one piece. The printer does an amazing job. You know, if you really look at it, you can see the layers. But once it's primed and painted, they pretty much disappear, especially at the distance anyone views it. And you get, pretty good detail of rough stone from the printer, even though it's printed as one piece, the floor, and then vertically. So after they're printed, we prime them, and then that's done off screen because it's like a spray thing. But then these are all then hand painted, base coated, big brush, lots of paint. Okay, unlike the tiny little stuff that happens with these models. Base coated, and then a detail. Everybody wants little detail blocks in, right? Different color. These would ordinarily then be washed with a dark gray wash to make it look like they were weathered. The cool thing about these is that under the base here, there are little ball magnets in each corner. There's 2 ball magnets in each corner. And then a base is put on to hold them in place. And then that allows them to hold on to each other. So they're magnetic in this, not in the sense of you have to be magnet magnetically attached to the base. This is cardboard, right? They attach to each other, and they come in. Sometimes you can put like little clamps or tabs or something to hold them together, but these just come apart like that and then stick like that. And so we use these in our Dungeons and Dragons show whenever we go into a place, be it a stone dungeon or in this case, maybe a tavern or a warehouse or a manor house or something. These are made to look like wood, and they do look pretty woody. Just get a whole box full of these things and arrange the dungeon any way you want. Okay. We even had one episode where we went into a mimic dungeon, kind of, in that eliminating a power source caused the dungeon to rearrange itself. Just poof, just like that. Just took it apart and put it back together. So this is an example of the rough stone. This is the wood. Again, they're just primed, base coated in brown, washed with a kind of a reddish brown ink, and then the stucco painted on as a detail later. And this stream, if you look back at some of the things on YouTube, you could see us painting these. And then they have cool features like pivot hinged opening doors. Okay. And some of the metallic paint would be used to like paint the door handle and the brackets, right? And it's finished on both sides, so you can walk in through the door from the other room. So you can have even interior rooms. It's all done like that, the same sort of thing. And this is one from a specialist dungeon. It's like a fire mage or something, and this sigil is printed right onto the wall. This is a cut stone wall that's been painted and washed, and then we hand paint, the detail of the sigil. Yeah, kind of neat color combinations. It's kind of back in the day when we were doing these, one would see us painting all the little detail. And then going back with the brass colored paint and touching up the spots that got black or red on them. So that's how this stream actually got started, with the painting of all of the dungeon tiles that we ended up using in our Dungeons and Dragons show. And then eventually we had all the dungeon tiles we really needed, at least for a good long time. And that's how the model building started. That wasn't coffee. It's just hydration. Okay. Yeah, there's still a little time left. Let me finish this. Take it off of the paper towel. Ta-da. And this inside is going to be painted black. And I can do this without worrying about it too much. I can, this ring here, I'll just show you how it goes. Why not? I'm going to do a test fitting demo here. This goes in the base here, like that. Okay, so this ring ends up being invisible because it gets cemented in. Right? Oh, this is something I did. I was clever about this. Okay, this whole thing is white, right? And there's this rocket nozzle, so you don't want to be looking through a rocket nozzle and see it all white inside. So I painted the inside black. So when the rocket nozzle goes on, you're just seeing blackness. That was foresightful. Anyway, yeah. So I can put an alligator clip. This was used for yellow paint before. Just clip it there like that. Right on the edge. And it holds it well enough, and then I can paint the inside black. Except for where the alligator clip is. Well, I'll have to touch that up after I take the clip off. I'm sure there was some way I could do that, but It's not going to happen. When I'm looking at it, so I'm holding this with the alligator clip, and that's working just fine. But right there, where the clip is, it's white now. After I take the clip off, there's going to be a little white spot. And I'm not going to want that. So when I take the clip off, I'm going to just touch it up with a little bit of black paint. There's probably another way I can hold this. Like I could put it on the sticky tack here. But the sticky tack will actually come up around the edges as well. And then I'd have a white ring. So I'm just going to do this. I can hold it, rotate it pretty easily, get the black paint all over the place, and then just touch up that one spot way down deep on the thing later. And I can use my wood block again. I've been using this for like forever. Okay, black paint. I have one of the few things we splurged on was like a vortex mixer thing. It vibrates. It's like the mixer you get in the paint store, only much smaller. And it shakes up the paint pretty well. Looking over to the paint holders that Alexis designed and built with the PLA 3D printers. I should show them to you again sometime. It's recycled material. It's PLA stuff that we weren't going to use. We got some, inexpensive stuff that did not produce fine detail. And then there are all the spools left over from the PLA, and we had a lot of those because we printed a lot of dungeon tiles. And she made some paint holders, which are pretty cool. Yeah, which black paint I'm going to need, I can always squeeze out more. So put this over here. And now I'm going to make the inside of this flat black. Well, I told you that near the end of a stream, I start losing focus a little bit. I don't know if you noticed this, but there aren't any bristles on this end of the brush. There we go. Using this paint. This paint is pretty good. There's sort of a gloss on it that's been useful in certain applications. In this case, it dries. It levels pretty well. Don't see brush marks too much. Nice flat black. That's the little bit I'll have to touch up later where the alligator clip is holding it. Kind of nice, usually a really nice clean edge that way. You look around and make sure I haven't really missed any spots. I really don't want to do a second coat. So, yeah, it looks like it's it's black inside, and when I take the clip off, like I said, I'll just have a little dot of this. I probably won't even squeeze it out. I'll just take some off the tip of this with a little brush and touch up that little spot. So there's a rocket nozzle now. The rocket nozzle for the descent stage of the Lunar Excursion module. With that, I'll just set that up there. Why not? And now make a attempt to get the paint out of the brush. People, I sigh around the house. Is there something wrong? No, I'm just sighing, exhaling excess carbon dioxide or something. It happens at a certain age. Sighing starts happening. Okay. Well, back from travels. Anybody who joined in, I really appreciate it. I will be here again Friday and all three, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. Yeah. So I've got 4 more streams coming up before I disappear for yet another week. 1 more week after that, and then I'll be back for like a week and a half before I disappear for yet another week, and then I should be back pretty much, other than like holidays or something. I'm hoping anyway, through the rest of the year. I want to be back enough so that I can actually get this Apollo thing finished. On Friday, what I'll be doing on Friday is going over all those little bits that I showed you, the landing strut bits and the body of the descent stage, and just doing one final touch of everything. Those things are really light, and so when spraying the primer on it, they're going to move around. They need to be primed on both sides. So what I might do, why not? I'll do this on stream, is I use some double-sided tape to hold the pieces down while so that the spray, because they're really light, so that the spray doesn't just make them go flying off. I learned that the hard way too, when I was spraying some little pieces and they went flying around. That didn't work very well. So on Friday, I'm going to be going over all of those little struts and pieces and bits that you saw a little bit earlier that are in this box, and getting those ready to be primed. I will test fit, sort of pseudo test fit, one of the landing struts, because I want to follow the instructions and see how it fits together, so I know what I'm getting into. And then I'm going to get a piece of cardboard like this, a fairly large one, and cut pieces of double-sided tape to hold down all the bits that will need to be painted, primed and painted. And then, depending on, we'll just see how it goes. If there's more time left during which I should do something other than not do anything, I will start getting pieces for the command module out, just to take a look at what I'm getting into with that last bit. And maybe, it would probably be a good idea. I'll bring out the pieces that I've already finished. There should be time on Friday to do that. And I should be I'll do that during the first part of the stream before break, because I'm less likely to drop them then, just to show you how much of the model has actually been completed and how it looks, because it looks okay. So I'm going to wrap up just a few minutes early, because I've talked about Dungeons and Dragons show. I invited everybody. I'm inviting you now to become a follower or a sponsor, or you could even go to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons and become a patron of Dyson Dungeons. That would be terrific. I want everybody to watch at least one episode, or as much of it as you care to, on YouTube of our Dungeons and Dragons show, because it's really cool and that's what we're all about. And invite you back on Friday at more or less 10 to watch some really tedious and boring preparation of pieces for the descent module. What I can promise is that if I get them cleaned up and I get them ready to paint, okay, and they're painted, that pretty much all that's left is assembly and maybe some detail painting. And so there's a chance that you'll actually see this thing, if those little landing strut things don't fail, okay, if it's not a disaster, you might see this thing actually come together. So again, Friday, I'm going to be doing final prep work on the landing strut bits and the body of the lunar module, and I will show you the parts that are already completed so that you can believe that I actually construct models here and not just file and sand little bits of white plastic. And then maybe start finding and organizing the pieces of the command module. Okay, thanks everybody. I will be back on Friday at more or less 10, continuing to plug away at the Apollo stack model. See you then.